Welcome back to Silent Husband Club. We apologize for the long silence on our channel, but from now on, we'll do our best to bring you new stories every single day. What would you do if the person you trusted most suddenly became a stranger under your own roof? If every smile, every kiss, every word of love began to feel like a carefully crafted lie? This is the story of how my world crumbled in an instant. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment below. It helps this community grow and ensures you never miss our future stories. My name is Caleb. I'm 35 years old, and for most of my life I believed I knew exactly who I was: a farmer, a husband, a man whose roots were buried deep in the soil of a small town in Montana. For 14 years, I'd been married to Claire, my high school sweetheart. Together we ran a decent-sized farm, rows of corn and soybeans stretched across the fields, with a handful of cows and chickens filling the yard. It was hard work, but it was ours. And for a long time, I thought it was enough. There were good days and bad days, sure. We argued about little things: bills, long hours, chores left undone, but I always believed the foundation of our marriage was strong. Claire was the girl I'd asked to the harvest dance when we were 17, the woman who stood beside me when we vowed to spend our lives together. I thought nothing could shake that. But around 8 months ago, something began to change. At first it was so subtle, I almost missed it. She grew quieter, more distant, her laughter coming less often, her eyes lingering longer on her phone screen. She started taking trips into town more often than usual. When I asked, she told me she'd joined a book club. A book club. It sounded innocent enough, and I wanted to believe her. After all, didn't she deserve time of her own? Didn't we both? But little by little, the cracks widened. Claire began snapping at me over the smallest things. If I forgot to close the gate, if I tracked dirt into the kitchen, if I leaned in to kiss her goodnight, she'd roll her eyes, sigh, or turn away. It was as though I was sharing a home with a stranger, someone wearing my wife's face but none of her warmth. I told myself it was a phase. Every couple goes through rough patches, I thought. Every marriage has seasons of distance. And so, I buried my doubts, convincing myself I was just being paranoid, that if I worked harder, loved her more, things would return to normal. But I was wrong. God, I was so wrong. If only I'd known then that the storm on the horizon wasn't just in the sky above our fields. It was already creeping into my marriage, ready to tear everything I thought I knew apart. It was in the heart of summer when everything I had built, everything I believed in, came crashing down. The air was thick with heat that July afternoon, the kind of sweltering day that made the horizon shimmer like a mirage. I had been out in the field since dawn, racing against the storm clouds gathering in the distance. Sweat dripped into my eyes as I worked, muscles aching, but I told myself it was worth it. If I could get ahead of the storm, the crop might be spared. That's what my life had always been about: sacrifice, effort, and providing. By midday, exhaustion pressed down on me, and I decided to head back to the house for a few minutes of shade. As I passed the old barn at the edge of the property, a place we barely used anymore, except to store broken tools and rusting machinery, I caught the sound of something strange. A muffled laugh, the rustling of hay. At first, I thought maybe one of the animals had gotten in, or perhaps Claire was looking for something. But there was a tone in that laughter, something that made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I moved closer, my boots crunching softly against the gravel. Through a narrow gap in the weathered wooden planks, I peered inside, and my heart stopped. My wife. My Claire. She was there in the hay, half-dressed, her body tangled with Nathan, our neighbor, the man who had shared beers with me at my table, the man who had helped me repair the tractor only weeks before. They were laughing, touching, lost in each other in a way that used to belong to us. The world tilted beneath me. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My vision blurred, my chest felt crushed. Then, like a floodgate bursting, rage poured through me, hot, searing, uncontrollable. Without thinking, I shoved the barn door open so hard it slammed against the wall. The sound of wood cracking echoed through the space, and both of them froze. The look on their faces, God, I'll never forget it. Claire's eyes widened, panic flashing across her face as she scrambled to cover herself with a piece of burlap. Nathan's mouth hung open, stupid and helpless, like a boy caught with his hand in the cookie jar. And me? I stood there, trembling, every muscle taut, my voice breaking as I roared, "What the hell, Claire? How could you do this to me?" She stammered, her tone dripping with that syrupy sweetness she used whenever she lied. "Caleb, it's not what it looks like." I laughed, a hollow, bitter sound that didn't even feel like it belonged to me. "Not what it looks like. You're half naked in the hay with another man. Tell me, Claire, what the hell is it supposed to look like?" Nathan tried to step in, words fumbling from his mouth. "Listen, man, I'm sorry. We didn't mean for this." "Shut your mouth," I snapped, the fury in me boiling over. "Get out. Now. Before I do something we'll both regret." He didn't wait for a second warning. Grabbing his shirt and boots, he bolted, tripping over himself as he scrambled out of the barn like the coward he was. And then it was just us, me and the woman I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, standing there in the wreckage of our marriage, wrapped in a sackcloth like some stranger I couldn't recognize. She stepped toward me, her voice pleading. "Caleb, please, let me explain. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." I shook my head slowly, my voice low, dangerous. "A mistake? How long has this mistake been going on?" Her silence told me everything I needed to know. When she finally spoke, her tone was sharp, defensive. "What does it matter? A few months, maybe. But it's not like you've been a perfect husband, Caleb. You're always out here, always working, never really present." Her words sliced through me, deeper than any knife. I had been breaking my back for this land, for her, for us, and this was her justification? My chest tightened, my stomach twisted. "Are you serious? I kill myself out here to put food on our table, and you betray me with the neighbor because I work too much?" She rolled her eyes then, that arrogant little gesture I had started to notice more and more in recent months. "Oh, please. Don't act like some kind of martyr. You love this damn farm more than you ever loved me." It was like being slapped across the face. I staggered back, struggling to process the venom in her voice. "After 14 years, that's what you think? That's what you really believe?" She crossed her arms, her chin raised. "If the shoe fits. At least Nathan listened to me. At least he made me feel wanted." And just like that, the woman I once adored, the girl I had loved since I was 17, was gone. In her place stood someone cold, someone cruel, someone who didn't care if she ground my heart into the dirt. I felt the walls of the barn closing in, the hay choking me with its smell, the memory of what I had just witnessed searing itself into my mind like a brand. "I can't do this," I muttered, turning on my heel. "I need to get out of here." Her voice followed me as I stormed out into the blinding sun. "Caleb, wait." But I didn't wait. I climbed into my old pickup, gravel spraying as I tore down the drive, the sky splitting open with rain as the storm finally broke. And in that storm, I drove, not knowing where I was going, only certain of one thing: my world would never be the same again. The storm outside mirrored the chaos inside my chest. Rain hammered the windshield of my old truck, the wipers struggling to keep up, but I barely saw the road. My hands clenched the wheel so tight my knuckles turned white, my jaw locked until it ached. Every image, every sound from that barn replayed in my mind on a cruel loop: Claire's laughter, Nathan's hands on her, the way her eyes shifted from guilt to arrogance in a single breath. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake from. I drove aimlessly, not caring where the road led. My only thought was escape from the farm, from Claire, from the truth I had just witnessed with my own eyes. My chest burned, my throat tightened as though I were drowning. And in some ways, I was. Everything I believed in, everything I had given myself to, was suddenly water rushing over my head, pulling me under. I thought about the girl I once loved at 17, about the promise she made under the stars on that same land I had nearly killed myself tending. Were those memories lies now? Were they poison from the beginning? Eventually, I found myself parked by the old riverside spot where my father used to take me fishing as a boy. I sat there for what felt like hours, the rain pounding the roof, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth. My phone buzzed over and over, Claire's name flashing across the screen. I couldn't bring myself to answer. What could she possibly say? That it meant nothing? That I misunderstood what I saw? There are no words that can wash blood from a wound, no excuse strong enough to erase betrayal. As darkness settled, I knew I couldn't stay there forever. I turned the key and drove back, every mile heavier than the last. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked lifeless, except for a dim light glowing from the kitchen. My chest tightened as I sat in the truck, staring at that light. A part of me wanted to turn around and disappear forever, but another part knew I had to face her, even if I hated what was waiting. Inside, Claire was at the table, a half-empty bottle of wine in front of her. Her eyes were swollen, her face pale, her hands trembling slightly when she looked up at me. "You came back," she whispered. I grabbed a beer from the fridge and sat across from her, the silence between us louder than any storm. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, only broken by the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Finally, she spoke, her voice small. "I'm sorry." The word struck me as hollow, an insult. I laughed bitterly. "Sorry you did it, or sorry you got caught?" She flinched, her lips trembling before she spoke again. "Both, I guess. I never wanted this to happen, Caleb. It just happened." "Things don't just happen," I snapped, the bitterness spilling out. "You made a choice. Again and again. Don't you dare tell me it just happened." Her tears came faster then, rolling down her cheeks as she nodded. "You're right. I chose wrong. I destroyed everything. I hate myself for it." For a moment, I almost reached out to wipe her tears, the way I had so many times before. But my hand stayed frozen on the bottle in front of me. The hurt was too raw, too sharp. Why, Claire? Why wasn't I enough? My voice cracked, the question burning its way out of me. She shook her head, her voice breaking. "It's not that you weren't enough. It's that I felt invisible. Like I was part of the farm, not a person anymore. I was lonely, Caleb. And Nathan, he made me feel noticed." Her words twisted inside me, stirring something I didn't want to admit. Guilt, shame, anger, they all fought for space in my chest. Had I neglected her? Had I buried myself so deeply in the farm that I'd lost sight of my wife standing beside me? Yet even as guilt crept in, rage returned to chase it away. "And that justifies this?" I hissed. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Nothing justifies it. I know that. But I still want us. I still love you, Caleb. Please, please give me a chance to make this right." I pushed my chair back abruptly, the scrape of wood against the floor cutting through the heavy silence. The walls felt too close, the air too heavy. I couldn't look at her anymore without seeing Nathan's hands on her, without smelling that damn hay. "I can't do this tonight," I said, my voice rough. I'll sleep in the guest room. We'll talk tomorrow. As I walked toward the hallway, her voice followed me, trembling. I love you, Caleb. I paused, my back to her, my throat tight with words I didn't want to say. Finally, I muttered, I love you too. But I don't know if that's enough anymore. That night, I lay awake in the dark, tossing and turning, haunted by the same image, the same betrayal that refused to leave my mind. Sleep came in restless fragments, each dream nothing more than a cruel reminder of what I had lost. And by morning, I knew the hardest part hadn't even begun yet. The next morning I was up before the sun, the weight of the night still heavy on my chest. Work had always been my refuge, the one place where my mind could focus on something other than pain. I grabbed my boots, stepped outside, and let the crisp morning air bite against my skin. For hours, I threw myself into the fields, my hands blistering, my back straining, anything to drown out the echo of Claire's voice telling me she loved me while the image of her betrayal burned itself deeper into my mind. I thought I might find some peace in the steady rhythm of work, but that illusion shattered when I saw a truck pulling into the driveway around midday. My stomach turned cold as soon as I recognized it. It was Nathan's. Rage shot through me like a lightning bolt. Before I even knew what I was doing, I was running across the field, dirt flying behind me as I sprinted toward the house. The sight of him standing at my door, facing Claire, was enough to blind me. "What the hell are you doing here?" I growled, my voice low and dangerous as I stormed onto the porch. Nathan raised his hands like a coward begging for mercy. "I just came to apologize, man. What happened, it was wrong, and I—" He didn't finish the sentence. My fist connected with his jaw before I even thought about it, the crack of bone sharp against the silence of the afternoon. He stumbled back, crashing against the porch railing, his eyes wide with shock. "Caleb!" Claire screamed, grabbing at my arm as I drew back for another punch. I shook her off, my chest heaving, my vision tunnelling red. Nathan was on the ground now, clutching his face, looking at me with a mix of fear and shame. Every ounce of restraint I had left was hanging by a thread. I leaned over him, my voice a growl. "Get the hell off my land. If I ever see you here again, I swear you won't walk away." He scrambled up, his boots slipping against the porch boards, before rushing to his truck. Gravel sprayed as he sped down the drive, vanishing into the distance like the coward he was. My hands still shook with adrenaline, my body ready for another fight that wasn't there. I turned back to Claire, her face pale, her eyes wide with horror. "Did you invite him here?" I demanded, my voice sharp as a knife. She shook her head furiously, tears brimming in her eyes. "No! I swear, Caleb, I didn't. He just showed up. I was about to tell him to leave when you came." Her words should have calmed me, but trust had become something fragile, something cracked and splintered between us. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But the part of me that still saw her in that barn, laughing with Nathan, kept whispering doubts into my ear. I said nothing, just turned away and walked back toward the fields, leaving her standing there on the porch. The weeks that followed were torture. The silence between us was suffocating, broken only by bitter arguments or tears that led nowhere. Nights were long and restless, days were heavy with unspoken words. Eventually, I knew I couldn't carry it alone anymore. I started seeing a therapist in town, someone to help me untangle the fury and grief inside me. It didn't fix me, but it gave me a place to bleed out the poison without destroying myself in the process. Then, about a month after what I began calling Day X in my head, Claire came to me one evening, her voice trembling. "Caleb," she said softly, "I think we should try couples therapy, if you still want to save our marriage." The words hung in the air between us. Did I want to save it? After everything? After the lies, the betrayal, the humiliation? The truth was brutal but undeniable. I did. I still loved her, even if that love was scarred and broken. I nodded slowly, my voice steady but low. Okay. Let's try. And so began another battle, one I wasn't sure we could win. Couples therapy was unlike anything I had ever faced. It wasn't about sweat and soil, about fighting storms and keeping a farm alive. It was about standing naked in the truth, admitting the things we had buried for years, and daring to confront the wounds we had both inflicted. Every session felt like peeling off another layer of skin, exposing nerves that had been raw for too long. Claire spoke of loneliness, of feeling invisible, of nights where she sat in the kitchen staring at the clock while I worked late in the fields. She admitted she had sought out Nathan not because she loved him, but because she was desperate to feel seen. Her words were like a knife twisting deeper, because buried beneath my anger, I knew there was truth in them. I had loved the land, the crops, the farm, but somewhere along the way, I had forgotten to love my wife as fiercely. But therapy also demanded that she face her own choices. She was forced to acknowledge that no amount of loneliness justified betrayal, that she had chosen deceit over honesty, destruction over confrontation. There were sessions where I couldn't even look at her, or rage boiled in my veins until I thought I'd explode. There were others where the tears in her eyes broke something inside me, reminding me that beneath all the bitterness, there was still the woman I had once promised forever. It was brutal, grueling work, but piece by piece, we clawed our way forward. A year after that wretched day in the barn, we renewed our vows. It wasn't a grand ceremony, no choir, no crowd, just a small gathering with a pastor and a handful of family and friends. I remember standing across from her, looking into her eyes, and for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt a flicker of hope. The vows didn't erase the past, but they marked a choice, a decision to keep fighting, to keep showing up, even when the ghosts of betrayal whispered in my ear. Time passed. 5 years slipped by, and life slowly reshaped itself. Nathan was long gone from town, and though I couldn't bring myself to forgive him fully, at least his shadow no longer fell across our lives. The farm grew stronger, we bought new fields, even planted orchards. Claire threw herself into the business side, running accounts, dealing with buyers, finding her own place within the work that had once driven a wedge between us. I made my own changes too. I stopped hiding behind the fields, started carving out time for her, for us, for a life beyond work. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And yet, trust remained the hardest thing to rebuild. There were nights where I woke drenched in sweat, certain she was gone, certain I would find her in someone else's arms again. There were moments when a smell, a sound, a flash of memory would hurl me back to that barn like no time had passed at all. But Claire was patient. She never demanded forgiveness, never rushed me. Instead, she proved herself through consistency, through openness, through the kind of quiet devotion that spoke louder than words. Slowly, painfully, I began to believe in us again. Then came the evening when she asked me, almost shyly, if I had ever thought about children again. For so long, I had shoved that dream into the shadows, certain that our marriage was too fragile to support it. But as she spoke, I realized something had shifted. We weren't perfect, but we were still standing. And maybe, just maybe, we were strong enough to build something new. I admitted I had thought about it, and when I saw her smile, genuine, bright, filled with hope, I knew we were stepping into another chapter, one we hadn't dared to imagine for years. Months later, Claire handed me the news with tears streaming down her face. We were going to be parents. The moment was overwhelming, a tidal wave of emotion that washed away so much of the bitterness that had once consumed me. When our son was finally born on a warm spring morning, I held him in my arms and realized that, despite everything, life had led me exactly here, to a second chance I never believed I'd have. But even then, as joy filled me, I knew one truth that would never change: scars don't disappear. They fade, they soften, but they remain. And I had to learn to live with them. Now, as I sit here writing these words, my little boy is playing on the living room rug with a wooden toy tractor, his laughter filling the house with a sound I once thought I'd never hear. Claire is in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepares dinner, the scent of roasted chicken drifting through the air. The farm is alive, thriving more than ever, and on the surface, everything looks picture perfect. But beneath it all lies a truth I've come to accept: the past never disappears. It lingers like a scar beneath the skin, a reminder of how fragile trust can be and how easily it can shatter. There are still days when the memory sneaks up on me, the smell of hay, the creak of the old barn door, a song on the radio that takes me back to that summer storm. And when it does, the weight in my chest returns, that same crushing pain that nearly destroyed me. But instead of letting it consume me, I've learned to breathe through it, to accept it as part of my story. Forgiveness isn't about erasing the past, it's about choosing not to live inside it anymore. Claire has spent years proving her love to me in ways I never asked for but desperately needed. She doesn't try to rewrite what happened, she acknowledges it, owns it, and shows me through her actions that she is still here, still fighting for us. And I've realized that love isn't the fairy tale I once thought it was. It's not flawless, it's not always gentle. Sometimes it's raw, scarred, imperfect, and yet, it can still be strong. When I look at my son, when I see the way he looks at us, I know why I stayed. Not because it was easy, not because the pain disappeared, but because somewhere deep down, I still believed in us. Our story is not one of perfection, it's one of loss, betrayal, forgiveness, and rebirth. And though I'll never forget the day my world collapsed, I'll also never forget that from those ruins, something new was built. It isn't the life I dreamed of when I was 17, when I slipped a ring onto Claire's finger beneath the stars. It's messier, heavier, filled with shadows I never expected. But it's real, and it's ours. And maybe that's what love truly is, not the absence of pain, but the decision to stand together in spite of it. Thank you for watching. If this story touched you, shocked you, or simply made you think, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a comment, your thoughts, your story, your truth. Subscribe for more raw, real, and unforgettable confessions. And if this story made you feel seen, share it. Someone else might need to hear it too. You're not alone here. This channel is a safe space for those who've been betrayed, broken, and rebuilt.